Sorry.
Okay. Please observe that we avoid charged political speech because that is a little bit sensitive for many of us. And if possible, hold your chats until after the presentation so that we do not distract the main author or each other. If you want to ask a question, make a comment, you can send me a chat and I will keep it in mind, in line for the questions. Thank you very much. Then we start today's presentation with the first person on the screen who's already on there. It is Professor Mokgadi Kekae-Moletsane, who will be speaking on African culture, worldview, and indigenous healthcare in South Africa from a psychological context. Now, Mokgadi is a full professor in the Department of Educational Psychology at the University of the Western Cape in South Africa. She is an educational psychologist and researcher. Mokgadi obtained her PhD in educational psychology from the University of Pretoria in 2004. That's after I left the University of Pretoria, so I did not meet her then. For many years, she has been involved in the training of a number of programs, namely the B.Ed Honors Counseling, M.Ed Educational Psych, and M.Ed Learning Support Guidance Counseling. In addition to her teaching, she supervises and co-supervises honors, masters, and PhD students. She obtained leadership training for women in higher education from the HERS in USA, Moore College in the USA. Mokgadi presents papers in local and international conferences, publishes articles, writes books and book chapters. Her research interests include child development, learning and behavioral difficulties, inclusive education, psychological assessment and intervention, indigenous knowledge in psychology and education, decolonization of education, HIV, AIDS, and gender-based violence. All of these are very hot topics in South Africa at the moment. Furthermore, Mokgadi has occupied various leadership roles in education. The leadership positions that she occupied include HOD, Head of Department in the Educational Psychology Department, Deputy Dean for Research and Postgraduate Students, and Acting Deputy Vice Chancellor, Student Development and Support. She is the founder of the Center for Diversity in Counseling and Psychotherapy. The center collaborates with international universities, which are Christ University in India, the University of Toronto in Canada, and the University of Verona in Italy. Thank you very much. Let us then give Mokgadi Kekae-Moletsane an opportunity to present.
Sorry. Move out of the way. There you go. Sorry about that.
Good morning from South Africa. My name is Mokgadi Moletsane. I'm working for the University of the Western Cape. I just want to greet you all. I'm happy to present to this Oxford University, and I'm happy that I was given a chance to do so. My topic, or the topic that I'm going to present about, is African cultural worldview and indigenous health care in South Africa, the psychological context. In this slide, I'm going to discuss about the overview of the presentation. First of all, I'm going to talk about the introduction, unpack critical and inclusive psychology, traditional African cultural worldview, cultural and cross-cultural psychology in South Africa. We'll also have an activity, and thereafter African personality theory, and discuss about the diagnosis and healing process, and have another activity, and thereafter conclude. In the introduction, I just want to say psychology needs to respond to the rapid changes of the 21st century in South Africa. That's what the students and other professionals think, because psychology in South Africa is one-sided. It's too Western, it doesn't take into cognizance the African worldview. Professionals should be self-reflective and critical about its approaches and practices that are affecting or affected by societal changes, especially after 1994, when South Africa had the first democratic election. Students have called for increased access to education and also decolonize curricula at the tertiary level. So students think that curriculum is too Western. It doesn't take into cognizance African belief system. So they really want it to be inclusive in this regard. Institutions of higher learning should make psychology and education relevant to all South Africans, not only one part of South Africa or one part of the society. Africans need to be included as well. I'm going to talk about or unpack the critical and inclusive psychology. The critical psychology movement serves as a response to inadequate theory or practice in the field of psychology. Its aim is to challenge dominant theories and perspectives in psychology. It works towards redressing the injustices. Critical psychology also encourages different ways of looking at psychological methods. It challenges the Western and Eurocentric ways of approaching and relating to clients, whereby the indigenous people of South Africa think that the Eurocentric ways disregard their indigenous ways. In South Africa, critical psychology involves questions of the post-colonialism. It involves practices through which people may achieve emancipation, freedom, liberation, and space from particular power structure of oppression and exploitation. Critical psychology is therefore a mirror because it can reflect on the frame of reference of people in the disadvantaged position. In this light, I want to look at the measure of culture and psychological assessment. There is a lack of adequate measures of culture in psychological assessment in South Africa. Many psychologists in South Africa who render services to clients from traditional backgrounds have questions whether Western knowledge has universal validity. The overwhelmingly Western bias of psychological training in South Africa leaves professionals ill-equipped to deal with local problems. In this regard, many psychologists think that psychology is too Western and is not giving a lot of help to the local people. Indigenization of psychological knowledge means showing the importance of producing frameworks that are consistent with local experiences and worldviews, and that are applicable to local problems. Africans believe in collectivism. So collectivism is very much important. Collectivism is the notion that all elements in the universe are connected to or dependent on each other. It emphasizes the significance of or places priority on group or individual. Its focus is on community, society, or nation. The focus is never on an individual, but the focus is on the support of other people. Hence, the community and the society and the entire nation are very much important. Communal living, or the collective consciousness reality by which African people are known, is also very much important. So if you have something, you have to share with other people. That's what they believe in. The general African cultural worldview regarding human nature is that it is an independent, inseparable whole. Spiritualism is very much important in Africa. Spiritualism is another important aspect of African cultural worldview. It is a metaphysical belief that has various interrelated forms, including that the world is made up of matter and spirit and the relationship between them. The universe is populated by spiritual entities, such as the spirits of the dead or ancestral spirit. All these dimensions are reflected in the spiritualism aspect of African cultural worldview. So when people die, according to the African belief system, they are taken care of by their ancestors. So the body can die, but the spirit will never die. I'm going to talk about cultural and cross-cultural psychology in South Africa. A culture is an important construct in defining, describing, and explaining normal and abnormal behavior. It provides a centralized role in understanding behavior. Culture refers to the how, or maybe how our behavior is shared and how behavior is learned, how behavior is transmitted from one generation to the other. Skills and knowledge for multicultural assessment include the following: recognizing cultural diversity, understanding the role of culture, ethnicity, and race in the socio-political and economic development of diverse ethnic and cultural populations. Understanding the significant impact of socio-economic and political factors on the psychosocial, political, and economic development of groups. Helping clients to understand, maintain, and/or resolve their own socio-cultural identification. Understanding the interaction of culture, gender, and social or sexual orientation on behavior and needs. I'm going to talk about African personality theory. Africans believe that there is a powerful being which supersedes all of us. This supreme power is invisible and can be seen as God, or even more than one God. God is the supreme being and the ultimate source of life energy. The ancestors are those who died, but whose spirits are still alive and are among the living. They are watching and protecting their living relatives. They are communicating with God on behalf of the living. The means of communication can be through dreams, signs, or traditional healers or traditional spiritual healers who can deliver the messages to those who are alive. In this slide, I'm going to discuss or explain African model of personality. As you can see on the diagram, at the highest level, we have the supreme power, which is God. So the God is connected to the ancestors. Ancestors are those who left this world, and ancestors are still taking care of the relatives who are living. So you can see that there's a connection between the God and the ancestors ancestors are connected to their relatives and the people that they are taking care of while they are dead. And as you go down, you can see that the body that the ancestors is taking care of also needs a good environment, it needs family, it needs community. Hence, the Africans are very interconnected. So community is very much important to them. I'm going to explain further this diagram. As you can see the diagram, the outer layer of the body is like a cover or container of the human body, that is physical shape of a human being. And there are other levels of functioning, such as the physiological, which focuses on the body's physiological functioning. We have psychological, which focuses on the stability of a person's mind. And we have the physiological and psychological levels that helps the body to be healthy and to survive. For instance, the body needs food, good nutrition, and stable mind. I'm going to continue with the African personality theory in the slide. The spiritual part is very much important. The spiritual part is regarded as the inner part or the seat of a person because it is regarded as something which is inside a person. The spirit is regarded as the seed because it does not die even after the body has died. The inner layer of the body is the spiritual principle, which represent a soul that can never perish. It can leave the body during sleep and during trance state and lives definitively upon death. The spiritual principle does not give life to the body, rather it has an existence of its own. It belongs to the sphere of the ancestors and representing the sphere in each person. I'm going to continue with the African personality theory in the slide. The spiritual part is very much important. The spiritual part is regarded as the inner part or the seat of a person because it is regarded as something which is inside a person. The spirit is regarded as the seed because it does not die even after the body has died. The inner layer of the body is the spiritual principle, which represent a soul that can never perish. It can leave the body during sleep and during trance state and lives definitively upon death. The spiritual principle does not give life to the body, rather it has an existence of its own. It belongs to the sphere of the ancestors and representing the sphere in each person. The environment is also very, very important. We are all connected or have relationship with the environment. People adapt to their own environment. If the environment is not good, they get sick and they're not happy. Why? It's because the state of equilibrium is weak. We have a firm connection between the gods or the supreme power, the ancestors, the environment, the family, and the community. This is called state of equilibrium. So that's where everything is connected. The state of equilibrium is represented by the lines that join the different levels together. If you can look at the diagram, there's a line in between. That line puts all the elements together. So if the different levels are held together firmly, the levels being the supreme power, ancestor, physical, physiological, psychological, and spiritual level, then there is a state of equilibrium in a person's life. That means the person is everything is intact, the person is happy, and the ancestors are also happy. In the state of equilibrium, a person is healthy, happy, and satisfied with life in general. That means is very healthy, they prosper, they progress in life, they're sane. So this is a very, very stage where everything goes well with a person. This can be because of the ancestors are satisfied. It is because a person has a strong bond and good relationship with his or her family or takes good care of the elderly people in the family. The elderly people are very much important in the African culture because they will take care of the family when they are gone, when they are ancestors. On the other hand, if one or more of the levels are not held firmly, then the person is in a state of disequilibrium. The state of disequilibrium is when the person is unhappy, the person gets sick often because the relationship or bond between the levels is very, very weak. This happens when a person had angered the ancestors. The African personality model helps in providing an explanation of etiology and treatment of illness and mental disorder. Illnesses and disorders happen when the lines of connections are disturbed. In order to diagnose the illness or disorder, one has to establish where in these lines of connection the disturbances have occurred. A rupture of the connection between a person and their ancestors leads to a serious chronic psychotic state. A rupture of the connection between a person and their family leads to organic illnesses. That is organic brain syndrome and so forth. This disequilibrium in the connection between a person and their community leads to psychosomatic illnesses as well as neurotic states. That, for example, acute or chronic anxiety, depression, and obsessive compulsive disorder and phobia. Once the site and nature of the rupture have been identified, the person equilibrium can then be restored by means of therapy or other indigenous ways of healing. Healing occurs when there is a resolution of conflict with the community, family, or ancestors. By so doing, the connection lines will become firm again and the connection will not be disturbed. So I just want to read an activity that can really help you to make sense of this theory. Mandla's mother passed away recently. He feels guilty because he did not give his mother enough support while she was still alive. His mother suffered a stroke, and on several occasions, Mandla refused to transport her to the hospital for regular checkups, saying that he was too busy. He used to go to parties with friends, and now that his mother is no longer alive, he feels bad that he did not give her all the support she deserved, and he never told his mother that he loved her. Mandla is now experiencing severe headaches and sleepless nights. He often dreams about his mother being angry with him. So based on Mandla's scenario, explain the following: the consequences of disequilibrium and rupture of connection between Mandla and his mother who passed away. Another question is, or maybe explanation can be, explain the reason why firm connection and good relationship between different levels of the African personality model are crucial for a person's health. In conclusion, I just want to say that Indigenous knowledge system has been ignored due to South African political history. So South Africa has been colonized for many years. Education system is Western, and African knowledge doesn't feature anywhere in education. So there was this movement, student movement called Fees Must Fall. Students are starting to ask questions. Why this curriculum or all this, the university syllabus doesn't include African knowledge? So we really need to include that in our education in South Africa. That's the challenges that we are facing. The youth are disappointed and they want their culture to be reflected in education. I developed this module of the theory from the information that I collected about 15 years ago. While I was a psychology student, I used to ask the same questions because everything that I was taught about is too Western. When I went back to the township to really assess people in the township. There were those who didn't understand where I was coming from. So it's important as well to include knowledge for those who really are not educated. Challenges that our youth are facing is sometimes they feel they're not Western enough as far as knowledge is concerned, and they're not African enough. They ask serious questions. The question is where to go from now, especially in the institution of higher learning. So they keep on asking those kind of questions. But I'm so happy to share with you, just to share what is happening in psychology in South Africa. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mokgadi. You are now coming back online. Let me just see. She said that she would be answering questions. So if I can just get Mokgadi, can you hear me? Hello. And if you can turn on, that's right. So thank you very much for your interesting presentation. We are very happy to have shared with you, that you shared with us the more indigenous knowledges of South Africa and from Africa more generally. Any questions to Mokgadi?
Can I say something? I just want to thank you, and I'm so happy that I'm finally connected. I struggled and I called my daughter to help. We tried all the time, but at last we were connected. So, and I'm so grateful that I put it on the voice note yesterday, just in case something happens, because we have a load shedding, anything can happen anytime.
That's right, we have load shedding in Pretoria.
Okay, before you ask question, I should think the last slide, can I just say something about the last slide, the very, very last one? Where is it? Oh. Okay, because afterwards, I'm trying to open the slide. Okay. Oh, that is my slide. No, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Oh.
Now it won't show on the screen. Just you can just.
Matter.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it doesn't matter. Yes, because I just wanted to say thank you in many languages, because South Africa is a multilingual country. So yes, I just wanted to say thank you, dankie, ngiyabonga, inkosi, merci beaucoup, and the list goes on. So, but thank you for listening to my presentation.
Okay, any questions? Any questions to Mokgadi?
I don't have a question, but I do have a comment.
Yes,
I feel that there's something universal. There's some commonality that I'm hearing, not just South African, but like even in the Asian culture, there are those who believe that there's ancestors who protect them. And there is that, I know in the Korean culture, there is that every year they have this ceremony for their ancestors. And even in like Hispanic population, they have a Day of the Dead where they think about their ancestors and all that. So it's not only unique to South Africa, but I see the humanity of it in all different cultures outside of the Western. And you know, sometimes it's religion, sometimes it's ancestral, you know, stories that have been passed down, but the whole the connection of, you know, recognizing the ancestors take care of you, they are guarding you, you know, after they've passed away. I see some universal consistency there. And thank you for your presentation. It just makes a lot of sense.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Helen. Any more questions? Yes, Christine.
I do thank you for the description of how the spiritual component and the ancestral component fit for the client that you described. And when you were working with him in the activity that you described, and you talked with him about how the dreams were coming to him because of his mother and her passing, and how he was feeling about what he wished he had done, and now she is gone, and his headaches and things. I would like to know first what his response was, and then how you worked with him in her passing because of the spiritual components, because that was such a perfect fit with his whole being culturally. Thank you so much.
Yes, according to the African culture, family, community is very much important. And if one disregard or disrespect, especially elder people, because they're the ones who guide the family. So it's not about an individual. If one sick, everybody takes care of the child. If the child is born, the neighbors and everybody, they come and bring gifts. And they really try to, we have this thing that you call sereto, that is a traditional praise. So that child is welcome by praise. The community, the neighbor, the parents are praising this child. So that is the first support that the child gets. So the child will be known by the society and so forth. Already the child is now connected in a bigger way. So whatever the child will grow being supported by everyone. So then if, when we are now in this education that doesn't take into cognizance this culture, you know, the children are now disconnected with the parents. If you can see those who are educated from universities, there's now disconnection between them and their parents who are in the rural areas. Some of them, they feel they're important now, they disregard the parents, they just, you know, but others, nowadays, most of them want to go back. They said, but we want to go back to our roots. It seems we are lost. So that's how now at the university, they are now, most of the students, they really want that kind of knowledge. And they don't say throw away Western knowledge. They say, but at least if we can have part of our knowledge in this, in the university, so that we can be, you know, we can be rooted in Africa and also be employed and know what is happening globally. Because the Western knowledge is a global knowledge. But if you are in our country, it has to be relevant to the community. It just, when I go to the township and do the assessment, I learned a lot. Hence, I'm writing about these things. So some of the things I didn't know because I was raised in my parents were educated. I was raised in the, but I didn't know that there's another knowledge outside. So I'm so grateful that I had to know this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mokgadi. Any more questions? Yes, Brian, and then Tom.
Thank you, Mokgadi, for this excellent presentation. And I was thinking about how this fits very much with school-based family counseling, which is a very different approach to looking at mental health than traditional Eurocentric models. And in a school-based family counseling model, working with the persons in African culture, the ancestors would be treated as real entities, not as fantasies in the client's mind. And so when you do a family assessment, you would include that. And in your genogram, you would treat these ancestors as real persons in terms of the effect on your client. So I see really opportunities for infusing the school-based family counseling model with the model that you have developed. The piece is probably newest would be the spiritualism piece, but that would be worth integrating as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Tom, you wanted to ask a question?
Thank you, Mokgadi. I think it would be difficult for us to do too much contemplation of how culture impacts the work that we do. So I really appreciate you bringing to mind the African culture and how important it is. My question that arose as you were looking at the case study, there was a breakdown in the relationship between the son and his mother. And what I was wondering is, from the African cultural perspective, is there opportunity for the son to rebuild relationship with his mother after she's passed away? And I'll go to mute.
Yes, there's, intervention is important. In this case, there are traditional healers who are specializing in this. If there's a rupture between the family and the ancestors and the living, they know how to intervene. So the traditional healers are trained, African traditional healers are trained, and they know exactly what is happening. And they can interpret the dreams. If somebody dreams about this all the time, they'll know exactly, they'll pick it up that there was sort of not harmony between this person and the person who died. So they can intervene and do rituals and, so that he can pick himself up again. So they've got their own ways of dealing with that kind of stressful situation because of the conflict. And, because if somebody dies when you're not in good terms, definitely it will haunt you. So that haunting can, it leads to so many things, sleepless nights and depression and so forth.
Yeah, very true. Okay, final question from Karen, and then we can conclude because we have to make time for the next one. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Mokgadi. That was a wonderful talk. And I'm thinking a lot about the interest in the US. There are students who are coming into training to become counselors or educators or psychologists who also are very much feeling like we don't attend enough to Indigenous knowing. And so I'm curious whether you could speak to how a training that would be satisfying to one of your students might look if we did a better job, if you were able to really help them fuse or blend Western and Indigenous knowing. How does it look when your students then go off and do work back with the community because they've been trained in this much more integrated way? I'm thinking you probably have some students who you've been able to add so much more and put Western and Indigenous together. And I wonder if you could tell us about that so we can do a better job in other places too.
Yes, I'm teaching students. Oh, can I? Okay. I'm teaching students, especially we have I'm teaching a psychopathology module. I contribute, is a book, there's a prescribed book where I contributed this model and my knowledge in this regard. So because for us, it's not, most of the psychologists are complaining because they don't have this kind of knowledge. So they keep on, I wrote articles, I get a lot of questions, and I'm presenting even in prison, prisoners, they have got, what some psychologists in prison, they told me that if a prisoner lost a parent, they asked the psychologist to release them for a day so that they can do rituals. If their parents can be buried without them, they won't be happy in their lives. So they asked me, why is it so? So I had to go and unpack and have seminars with other psychologists because they realized that this knowledge is very much important. Before African people were just consulting traditional healers, but now they integrating, they go to psychologists. And if the psychologist doesn't understand where they're coming from, then there's a problem. So even the honor students, I wrote chapters, so I teach them about this module.
Thank you very much, Mokgadi, and thank you to all the questions. I now ask Jackie to conclude for us and say thank you.
Thank you very much, Katina. It has been an amazing first day, and now we're starting our second day. And again, we are so appreciative of you, Mokgadi, for giving us a great start. School-based family therapy Oxford Symposium has always given us the sense that we're going to come to learn, we're going to come to be together, and we're going to seek new knowledge. Today, I think the added word for maybe all of us is curiosity, to look into ourselves, an awakening of what have we been not attending to in our own world of culture sensitivity. And you just put it all so succinctly today, and much, much appreciation for that. I love these specific words that you chose today, because it doesn't close down discussion, it opens it up. And I just jotted down the words that were so perfectly addressed. One was the inclusivity, the injustices that were mentioned, but we are able to change that if we do so. Relevant, well, the material today is of today, even though you brought in the ancestors, which I think is an amazing addition to our culture to be more specific in the West. The cultural worldview, we hear so much about it. We have zillions of courses in colleges to deal with that, but somehow it gets to be a little bit more of, okay, that was a great course, I got an A, but now what do I do with it? And the intrinsic value of putting today's talk together gives us that pathway. As educators, psychologists, therapists, every career could deal with this, not just our world. And the last one was that we are interconnected. The worldview, a word that's used all the time, is always out there, but we don't seem to know what it is. So your day today was to make us more curious. And I love the word curious, because it gives us a sense of, like, after our meetings, we can do more or read more. When I was studying American Indian culture, and it was a course I took in the 60s, we had someone from the Native American culture, and they presented it almost as if to say what you were saying today. And that is, if the body, mind, and spirit are not connected, we're not in equilibrium. And of course, Africa is the seat of civilization. Why shouldn't we look at Europe for guidance? And I thank you for that today. And I really, really think that we're going to take something home with us. Thank you very much, Mokgadi.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.